So let's start at the beginning, and obviously, if you could outline the start of your involvement with Aliens, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it was weird because there was a costume supervisor named Tiny Nichols, who was about 10 foot tall. And he phoned me up and called me in urgently to London, to the studios. And they had some alien marine armour made in fiberglass, and they were absolutely atrocious. And he showed them to me, and he said, "Can you improve on this?" He said, "We're desperate because Jim Cameron just hates them. You know, they were awful." So I said, "Yeah, sure." You know, I said, "I could certainly do them better than that." And so I got all the drawings which James Cameron had done, which I've got copies of actually, which I will sign, and if you want to purchase them at the store, advert. But they only had 3 weeks, because each character, there was 8 characters, and each character had 3 suits as a backup and for the stunt doubles and stuff like that. So it was 24 sets I had to make in 3 weeks. And it was just, well, we just worked 24 hours. And basically that was how that came about. So it was all like a last minute rush. And then I arrived on the set with them, and Jim Cameron, we kind of dressed all the guys in it. I think it was, at that time it wasn't Michael Biehn. I've got the set of the original Cameron designs with a copy of the very first call sheet from the film. And you'll see on the call sheet...
that would have been James Remar, wouldn't it?
James Remar, yeah. But he got busted for drugs or something at the airport, and they deported him out.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. and they rushed Michael Biehn in. So I dressed all the guys and lined them all up, and Jim Cameron looked at them, and he said, "Great." He said, "But what we want you to do is to go with Terry to the shops and just find anything that, like to put on them, like logos or scratch something in it, whatever. And what he wanted to do is get that Vietnam look, you know, where the guys used to put the fag packets in their helmets and write their girlfriends' names and stuff like that. And that's how that came about. So I went off to the shops with all the guys, and they just went out buying all this stuff. And I remember, I made very good friends with Bill Paxton. And he Hudson, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Bill Paxton, yeah. And I think we went to a motorcycle shop and got the big skull and crossbones, which we stuck on. And then I did the heart thing, was it? Yeah, no, that was Hicks, wasn't it? Yeah, Louise, that's it, yeah, with the Anganaki knot. And that was also my mother's name, so we had a tie with that. But that's how that kind of came about, that look of the armour and the personalisation of it. And then I did the smart guns, started doing the writing on that, and then the pilot helmet, Fly Me, whatever it says, I can't remember now.
Fly the Friendly Skies, isn't it? Yeah, I've got a replica.
Yeah, Harry's got most of this stuff now. I mean, lucky bugger. I think you must be a millionaire, I think.
Only in rupees.
It's crazy, you know, because when I made that stuff, what was it, 1985, wasn't it?
Yeah, it would have been.
And I think I charged them, I think they were about 700 quid a set. And it was funny when, you know, I said about the making, I only had 3 weeks. And I got pulled about 3 people in to help me do some of the hammering and the rough work, and I did all the finishing. And I didn't even think about the painting, the camouflage, because Jim had designed his own camouflage, which he had printed up on all the cloth of the uniforms. And I had to kind of base the armour on that camouflage. And I didn't even think about that. I thought, well, it's just painting, isn't it? I tell you what, we were 3 days solid, day and night, just painting this stuff. It was like it went on forever. It was like painting the Severn Bridge. I thought, Christ, yeah, another one. And some of them have actually got our names signed into the camouflage. I've never actually found them myself, but there may be...
I've seen a K in one of them, because you had one of your crew members was Keith or Kevin, is that right?
It could be, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of our names are in the camouflage there somewhere. One of them silly little things one does. But, yeah, and that's kind of what happened with that. And arrived on the set with him, and Jim was very happy with him, and that's kind of what happened. Yeah.
Okay. And of course, let's go back a bit, of course. Your history is in sort of traditional medieval armour and stuff, isn't it? So were you chosen for Aliens on that basis, that you were...
I'll put that on there.
Or, yeah, you can stick it on there if you want.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it's fine. Sorry, it's my laptop.
Modern technology, I can't stand computers, I hate them. Yeah, sorry, mate. What?
So yeah, I mean, because your history and your training was in sort of in medieval armour, really, were you chosen for Aliens on the basis of your skill in that?
Yeah, I mean, I've just over the years, I've just built a reputation up for metal bashing, really, and beating out suits of armours. And I go way back to, God, when did I first start? I mean, 50 years. It's 5 decades. It makes me feel ancient. Well, I probably am. In the business, I think I've worked on over 70 productions, including theatre and stage and film. I think I've done well over 40 films. It's been quite haul, really. Yeah. But some of the first films I worked on, God, this dates me. I mean, I worked on Dot Zhivago. You think, didn't they have armour in that? No, they didn't. But I made all the buttons and the badges and all the regalia they wore, the breast orders and all that sort of stuff. And then I did Charge of the Light Brigade and 351 Fahrenheit, 451. Yeah, that was now a cult movie. I made the helmets and the little badges for that. So it kind of goes back a long, long way, but I think it was 40 years ago, I think it was, I started my own company called English Arms and Armour. And I think one of the first big films I did was Jabberwocky. You know, I've never seen that. Yeah, great film. And it was funny because it all happened within 2 weeks. I actually had sorry, this is that bloody thing Trevor gave me last night.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. Beautiful. Anyway, I don't do that stuff. Where was I? Yeah.
Jabberwocky.
No, yeah.
You're in Leicester.
Oh, yeah. Oh, is that right? Oh, hey. Who's these people? Star Wars. Who directed that thing? It was
George Lucas.
George Lucas. And he actually came to my house with an entourage for about 4 or 5 people. Had a costume guy and everything. And they asked me if I could make the robots for this film called Star Wars. And I actually designed why they were there. I drew them in front of them. I did a very quick sketch of Darth Vader, and I based it on a Gothic helmet called a Sallet helmet, which is a bit like a German helmet, Second World War helmet. And I put the eyes and the grill and stuff in it. And I did three sepia, and I did one for the little robot one that Kenny Baker was in. I can't remember. Yeah, that's all. Thank you. And I did that with all tentacles and stuff, which they didn't use. But they actually finished up using my design. The Darth Vader is my design, and so is 3 sepia, exactly as I drew them. And someone else now lays claim to having done that, but it weren't as me. And what happened was that they went away quite happy, and they took the drawings with them, which I never do now. Fatal. And within a week, Terry Gilliam came to my house with the other Python crew. Yeah. Yeah, and Michael Palin. And asked me if I'd work on this film called Jabberwocky, you know. And I thought to myself, God, you know, what do I do? And at that time, Star Wars was played down as a very low-budget movie, which it was. I mean, Alec Guinness, I think he did it for a percentage. I think it was only something like 1.5%. And I think he got about 5 million out of it or something. Maybe, we don't know where it went. But at that time, it was played down as a very low-budget movie. It wasn't going to go anywhere. It was going to be some fantasy thing, you know. So I thought, Jabberwocky, they just had a roaring success with Holy Grail and the other one. I think that was it, no, Holy Grail, that song. And I thought, well, you know, I'll go with Terry Gilliam. You know, and I think now, and that's what I did. I mean, it was a great film. It was a lot of fun to work on, but I think now that where Darth Vader and where Star Wars went compared to Jabberwocky, it's like, well, big mistake. But I'm sure we've all got stories like that. So that's kind of what happened with that. And then I did. Then I did Excalibur. Did anyone see that film? And that really, I think, even now, I would say, was probably the best movie I ever worked on. I mean, working with John Boorman was just a pleasure. I mean, the guy was just so switched on and knew, you know, he could get people to do their very best. He could drag it out of you. We didn't have to drag it. He just did it because of him. Amazing, amazing man. And I'm actually trying to write a book on my life through the films. And John's couple of years ago did a book on his life of films, and there's a whole chapter in that book on me, and which is very kind of him. And I'm thinking now of writing a book, because the other one I was writing about my life has turned into War and Peace. I mean, it's become a bit daunting, but so I'm thinking of doing a very quick one just on my experiences on Excalibur, and maybe aliens, because there's so many funny stories on Excalibur and the way it all came about. It's really, if we had time, I'd tell the whole thing, but see how it goes.
Speaking of stories, I'd like to jump back to Aliens. And Terry and I have become great friends over the years, and of course I own Hudson's armour, which he made. And Terry tells this fantastic story of when you guys were on the Acton set with the head.
Oh, God, yeah.
And there's a reason why I want him to tell this, and I'll tell you the second part of it shortly. So I'll hand back to Terry.
Okay. Yeah, how did that go? We filmed, when I arrived on the set, well, that was at Pinewood Studios, and then we were all taken down to Acton Power Station, which I don't think's there now. I think they pulled it down because it was all derelict then. I think they were in the process of demolishing it. And they turned the whole thing into the Alien, what do they call it?
The atmosphere processor.
Yeah, that big complex where they all finished up one of the aims. And they were doing, this place was massive. It's like a big aircraft hangar. I mean, it was enormous. I think it went up about 5 floors, and the central area was all open right to the ceiling. So it was a massive, massive place. And me and my pal Pete Corrigan, who was an assistant with me at the time, we went up. They were going to do this. They had 3 cameras covered in polythene, set up with an alien creature there, and it was when they blow it to bits. Yeah, so they had all the cameras going. I think it was fast, slow motion shot. I think it was. I can't remember. And me and Pete went up, I think we was on about the 4th floor, and we were just directly above it, looking down at the cameras and this alien, waiting for the thing to explode. And we just like, and they fired it, and it just went poof. And we thought, okay. And Cameron said, no, come on. He said, I want this thing to really blow up, And so they re-rigged it all, got another one in, and put that in there, and really charged it up. But they kind of slightly overcharged it. And me and Peter just stand there expecting more, so it would be a slightly bigger bang this time. Well, you never heard a bang like it. I mean, the thing just went everywhere. Almost took the 3 cameras out. When you see the shot on the film, I mean, it literally, boom. And me and Pete, as I say, were 4 floors up, and the alien head came past us and just whistled. Honestly, it almost brushed you as it went, hit the ceiling and smashed to bits. That's how powerful the bang went. And then came back down again. We were smuggling all this green shit. We're thinking, oh, Christ. But we were lucky the bloody head, he just took our heads off. It was quite a thing.
Now, Terry told me that story a few years ago now, and since then I met a colleague of Chrissy Overs who just did the special effects talk, and of course she sculpted some of the aliens and things. And I know a friend of hers called Graham High who also sculpted some of the alien creatures, and he was puppeting. He told me a story which correlates to Terry's story, but Graham was puppeting that alien. So they kind of glued the arms to its shoulders and they were pulled off by wires, so it looked like it was kind of going... And he told me a story that they tried it once and it went, and then they tried it again. And he said when they set it off the second time, we nearly hit some geezer at the top there. Oops.
Yeah, very close. The other interesting thing, when we arrived there, they had the what do they call it, the APC vehicle, APC, isn't it? God, my brain. Trevor. And they had this full-size APC there. And what they'd done, they've got one of these truck things that they cart jumbo jets around from the airport. And I think they either bought it or hired it from the airport. And they hired a driver from the airport who drove this thing, because they're quite complicated. And they're just basically 4 big wheels and a big engine. And Jim had this whole thing clad in quarter plate steel, for real. I mean, the thing, I think it weighed 25 tonne all up, if I remember rightly. And they tried it out there's 2 stories about it here. They tried it out on the back lot of Pinewood Studios. And it kind of drove around, and Jim said, yeah, it's great. He said, how fast will it go? He said, can you just come down here and just flat out and see what happens? And so the guy just opened this thing up. I don't think he did more than probably 25 miles an hour, maybe. But because of the extra weight that Jim had put on it, of course, it the guy didn't realise it affected the brakes. So he stood on the brakes and nothing happened. And it just completely took one of the brick huts out in Pinewood Studios. It smashed all the front in, had to rebuild the front of it. But, and then the same thing happened on set when we were shooting at Acton Power Station. They had this big steel door that came down, and because of the length of the place, you wanted this thing to come down at quite a speed. You know, they had all set built. Well, you've seen the film. And so they got the camera right against this big steel door, literally a foot away from it. And that was it. And they had the camera crew, about 4 guys there. And they did the shot of the thing coming towards the camera. But the same thing happened. He stood on the brakes and misjudged it. And the thing actually hit the camera, took the camera out, and it pinned, I don't think it was the cameraman, I think it was either the focus puller or one of them, actually pinned his legs to the steel door, just touching. If it had been another 6 inches, it would have took his legs off. And that was, I don't know if anyone's ever known that story, but I was actually there when it happened.
It sounds familiar. Is that on one of the commentaries on the DVD? I'm seeing nods. Yeah.
I was actually watching that when it happened, and it was quite...
There you go, you got it from the horse's mouth.
I thought the guy was dead, you know. But, yeah, I think it slightly bruised him, it was about it. But another couple of inches.
Shall we take some questions from the audience?
If they want to ask some.
Let's find out.
I often say, you know, it's, I'm pinching this actually from Graham Hill. You remember the racing driver? Very funny guy. And he was doing a thing like this, and I was watching on the TV the other week. And he said, if anyone wants to ask any questions, please do so. He said, but don't worry if you haven't got any, because I've got loads I can ask myself. So I pinched that for Graham. Yeah, if you've got any questions, by all means. No? Okay.
No. Okay. Oh, we've got 2. Hey, let me just bring the mic over and so everyone can hear you.
What was the armour made from, Terry? What metal was it made from?
Alien.
In Aliens, yeah.
Always for film work, I always use aluminium. Yeah. And this is really one of the stories of Excalibur, on what I put in the book, because it kind of kicks the film off, is it jumped from 14 suits of armour to 106, and I only had 3 months to do it in. And I decided, because I'd made one in aluminium before for some advert or something, and because everything before that, like Jabberwocky, that was all made in steel. And because of the time factor and everything else, I thought I'd do it in aluminium, took a chance. And we arrived in Ireland with all the suits, and John asked me, he said, could you meet us out on the back lot? We just want to dress all the guys, about 50 of them, and just see how they work in front of a camera, you know, so it's like a test thing, and get the noise level and all that. So I'm up on this tank with John Borman and Tony Pratt and the other people, and they've got 50 of these guys, dressed them all in the armour. And John said, right, so can you just all walk around? And they're all walking around, it's all clattering. I'm thinking, okay, that looks good. Then he said, right, can you start running? So they started running, and I thought, a couple of bits started falling off, and I thought, oh, God. And then he said, can you all crash into each other like bumper cars? And they were smashing, there was dents going in, and I thought, Jesus Christ, I thought this stuff's got to last 6 months. But it did, and it's and I've always used aluminium since, because it does dent a lot easier, and you don't really see it, you know. And all you do when it all comes back in the evening after the film or the shooting finishes, you just bash all the dents out for the next day. But the beauty of it is it's so light for the actors to wear. I can make it look just like steel. I can put an aluminium breastplate in front of you and a steel one. You would not tell the difference. I'll get the age into it. And so that's kind of how that came about. And I've sworn by it ever since, because it doesn't rust in the rain, so it's a lot easier to maintain. So it's, yeah.
Okay, any other questions? We had one over there, didn't we? Okay, hang on a second, let me bring this over to you.
You mentioned your decision that you decided not to go with Star Wars, and that was something to regret. Are there any other films where you've made a bad decision, or any that you weren't asked to work on that you would have liked to? For instance, would you have liked to have worked on Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings films?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I was doing 13th Warrior. I think it came out as, didn't it? Antonio Banderas. Was it 13th Warrior? The original book with a different title, wasn't it? Can't remember what it was, Michael Crichton's story. Yeah, they came out as 13th one. Yeah, I was kind of working on that in Canada, and that kind of dragged on a bit, and I just kind of lost Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings, wasn't it? Yeah, so that was a bit of a shame, but I've missed a lot of films. I'm not up, especially now, because I'm not up to speed with computers. I hate the damn things. But I've got a website that I've had now for probably about 6 months, and it's got a few bits on it, but it says to be completed or something, or still in the process of being built. That's 6 months later, you know. I'm terrible. I can't get my head around computers. I hate them. But that's where the world's going, I guess. So I've got to get my act together, and you know, 'cause I'm losing a lot of films really recently. You know, like the Elizabeth, for instance, with Kate Blanchett. That was a good one. But having said that, I'm never not without work. So you know. I think the latest film I did was only a hire job, really. I just hired the whole of my stock for a film called Sucker Punch. Have you seen that? That's a great film. You know, when it came up, and I thought, Sucker Punch? What the hell was that? It's a load of rubbish. When I went to see it, I thought, bloody hell, it was really quite good. Yeah. And I begged him to go on location with that. I said, please, please. I said, I'll do it for nothing. Because I had all these scantily dressed girls, you see. That they couldn't afford me, so...
When Terry says he hired his whole stock, I've seen it, and there's hundreds of suits of armour up in his attic in the workshop there. It's awesome. Cool. We've got a question at the back here, so let's go over to there. Hang on a sec.
Hi, sorry, this isn't necessarily Aliens related, but your Mr. Freeze suit that you made for Batman and Robin is quite unusual in terms of it seemed to have a lot of lighting and effects in that way. Can you talk a bit about designing that?
I was kind of invited out to Hollywood by Bob Ringwood, I met Bob on Excalibur. He was the costume designer. Lovely, lovely guy, very camp, you know, lovely chap. And I've done a few films with him actually. Highlander 2, AI, what was that? Artificial Intelligence, IA. And he called me over for the Batman and Robin to make the Mr. Freeze outfit for Schwarzenegger. And I'd met Arnold before because I did quite a lot of the design and set out of the first three Planet Hollywoods. So I met Arnold through that. And there's a few funny stories here. I don't know if we've got time to do them. But it was an absolute nightmare. Bob, for some reason, kind of lost the plot. And when I went out there for 3 days to recce the job, looked at the designs, and I thought, yeah, it was great. When I went back, packed the whole workshop up, they flew the whole workshop out to LA. So I was there for 6 months. And when I got back there, Bob decided that he didn't like any of the designs, threw them all in the bin, and said, we're going to start again. So I thought, oh, okay. And then he said, can you just make something, make anything? You know? And he goes, I had all this, so I went out and got all these pictures of Art Deco stuff, you know, hair dryers, cars, trains, I plastered them all around the workshop wall to kind of give me the influence of that Art Deco feel. And just started prototyping stuff. And I think after about 3 months of doing that, 3 months, you know, and all I'd made was the helmet, and which really was my design anyway. And then Bob finally cracked, and he said he had a heart condition. I think that's what happened, and he left the film. And I was rather really pleased that he did, because then I could just get on with it, because I felt like I'd just been wasting 3 months. Yeah, and I made 4 of them. In the following 3 months, I did 4. I think it took about 6 weeks or so to do the first one, because once you've got all the patterns and you know what you're doing, the other 3 were a lot quicker to do. But it was a bit of a nightmare, though, that job, because of the pressure and everything else. But one of the funny things that happened was I'd made the laser cut life casts of Arnold. And I had 4 of those in the workshop, which were absolutely dead accurate laser cut. And he couldn't come in every day or anything, so I made the stuff to fit these dummies. And they wanted a dry run for a fitting before. For some reason, everyone's really frightened of Arnold. You know, he's like God. He's unbelievable. And they were all panicking and saying, oh, yeah, we'll have a dummy run for the fitting. And they had his stunt double, who was exactly the same size and exactly the same measurements. And they said, well, you know, we'll use him to give a run through. So I said, yeah, fine. And we all met up with all the big boys from Warner Brothers and everyone else, costume people, blowing on this big glass place about as big as this with all mirrors around it. And I dressed this guy in it. But the idea of the suit was it had windows in it. And I made the whole thing so it stood off his body about 2 inches, as though he was floating inside a liquid. And they were going to superimpose the bubbles and stuff coming up. And you could see all his muscles moving underneath there. That was the original idea. But when I put the breastplate on this guy, it had a gap of about this big, and it looked absolutely stupid. And they all kind of panicked and said, oh, it don't fit him, it's not going to fit Arnold. You know, I said, well, I couldn't have made that mistake, you know. Couldn't figure it out. I thought, what have I done wrong? So when they all left, they said, you've got to rebuild it all. They all left, and I said to the guy, nice chap, a Swedish, I think he was, and I said, can you stay behind? And he said, yeah, sure. And he stayed behind. I got a Polaroid camera, and I took photographs of him front, side, every angle. And I said, thanks very much. And I went back to the workshop, and I got the photographs of Arnold, and I did a tracing of the profile. Now, when you get 2 people at exactly the same measurements, some people are all in the front. It's like Trevor. I mean, Trevor's got a massive back, you know. So, although they've got an identical measurement, it doesn't necessarily mean they've got the same shape. And that's what happened. So I thought, no, I'm going to leave it, because I knew it would fit Arnold. And they were just panicking and saying, oh, have you altered it? No, oh, God, you know. They were panicking like hell, and Arnold was coming in the following week. And I remember going outside for a cigarette, and there was one of the top boys out there, and he was having a cigarette, and he was shaking like hell. And I said, you okay? He said, no. He said, Arnold's coming in. He said, that arm's not going. He said, you haven't altered it, have you? I said, no. I said, trust me, it'll fit him. He said, no, it won't fit the other bloke. I said, oh, well. And they were literally shitting themselves. Arnold turned up, and he said hello, because he remembered me from Planet Hollywood. And I put the breastplate, or put the back plate on first. I said to him, leave me alone, just let me do it, no interference. Put the back plate on, they were sitting around. And it just sucked onto him perfect. And I put the breastplate on, and it was like absolutely spot on. Put all the arms on. I don't think I had the legs made by then, I just had the top half made. And Arnold looked in the mirror and he went, Terry English, the greatest. And you would hear this sigh of relief. It was like, whoa. And that night they threw a $400 party for me to celebrate the fact that I'd pulled it off. But if I'd have altered it, it would have been a disaster. Yeah, yeah.
I love that story, Terry. Thank you. We're going to have to wind it up because we've run out of time. Fine. Give it up for Terry English. Thank you, Terry.
Hey, thanks. Lovely.